Welcome to From the Couch, Sports Talk Radio, the true definition of armchair quarterbacks. The two brothers express their highly inaccurate opinions about sporting news from chairs. Wait, they don't even have a couch? That's a dumb title. Anyhow. The views expressed by the hosts are only opinions, and any stated facts are purely coincidental. Sit back and enjoy yourself. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff and Dave.
Welcome, everybody, to a Thursday edition of From the Couch. We're going to be doing this going forward. It is me, KD. We are missing the Three Stooges, thank God. So we're going to be able to actually talk some sports, man.
Hold the hell up. Did you just say it is me, KD? You introduce yourself as me?
I'm sorry, it's Dave.
What's going on? What is going on, Dave?
It's KD and Dave. The other Three Stooges are not here, so that's a good thing. You know, it's nice to be able to have it. Man, we haven't had a show with just you and me in quite a while. Want to say hi to Paul, who's watching. Paul, this show never gets old. You're here every week, so stop your crying. Anyway, what's happening, my friend?
Oh, not much, man. Just chilling. Got me an adult beverage. I promise I'll keep everything mild. I don't know how many of these I'm going to have. But, hey, it is what it is.
Well, I can tell you with just me here, you're going to have a lot less than you would have if Jeff and everybody else would have been here, because I probably would have joined you.
Right.
But anyway, for those of you who know, listen, we are going to be doing the AFC North this week, their team needs and everything. So without further ado, guys, we're going to get right into this, and we're going to start with KD's favorite, the Baltimore Ravens. Give it to us, KD.
Okay. All right. So again, this salary cap, again, this thing could change again. Like every other team, there could be some restructures, could be some re-signings, could be some franchise tags. It could be a lot of different things that go on. When it comes down to the notable free agents, there's two that I really want to highlight because these guys are kind of like crossroad type of players for the Ravens when it comes down to what they're going to look for in the draft. And those two players would be Justin Madubuike and then Patrick Queen. A lot of the fan base is basically saying, hey, you know, at least one of these guys is out. But then I've also seen some people in the fan base are saying both of those guys are out. And we're basically throwing up a wish and a prayer by franchise tagging Justin Madubuike and just letting PQ walk. So I do understand where the frustration comes from and so forth. But then again, we don't know. We haven't heard from said player, hey, I want $30 million a year. Hey, I want $20 million a year. We haven't heard any of that stuff, right? I haven't heard players say, hey, look, I'm not willing to restructure my deal. Some of the guys that are notable for restructuring is Lamar Jackson, Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Stanley, those type of players. And those are our top three contracts when it comes down to their salary. So those guys turn around and restructure. Now we're talking, hey, you know, the Baltimore Ravens could get upwards to 25 to 30 million in cap space. 25 to 30 million in cap space may not be enough to sign both of those players I talked about, but it could darn well get one of them back in the building. Don't know how long, but you can probably get them in the building, and then you could probably re-sign some of the other guys that were notable free agents. But what it's looking like is a mini rebuild, if you will, because, again, the Ravens are going to kind of want to see who's out there in free agency before they start to pull the trigger on everybody. Because, again, I'm not sitting there saying that they don't want a player like a Kyle Benoit back or Jadeveon Clowney. I think they will end up wanting those guys back. It's just a matter of saying, look, do I want to overpay? Kind of like what I had to do with Odell because, again, you know, Lamar Jackson was in limbo. So it was, hey, look, I need the offense to look a little different before I just sign my name on the dotted line to come back into the same type of situation. So, again, you have a lot of different dominoes that's moving in the NFL. So depending on what domino comes available and what their particular price is looking like, the Baltimore Ravens may jump on one of them. You know, if they feel like, hey, okay, my guy was asking for $12 million a year, and I can get this cheaper option at $8 million a year, I'll probably take that 1 year, $8 million. Okay, For me, the thing I think the Ravens are gonna do is the Ravens are probably gonna try and make their bread and butter through the draft this year, right? I think they may trade a player or two in the draft, and then they'll basically go from I believe they had 6 picks or hold on, or probably no, I think it's 7. Let me see. Now you can go put the slide back up for me, please.
Sure will.
All right, so yeah. So they had 8 picks. So again, with those 8 picks, I think the wide receiver, the edge, and definitely the O line will probably be something that they'll probably double tap in the draft. Don't be surprised if they do. If not, I know for a fact they will definitely probably tap double tap 2 of those positions because again, they don't have a lot of cap room or a lot of pieces to trade off to basically bring in more draft pieces or draft picks or a little bit of offset of money. So again, it's going to get interesting in free agency, see who's going to come available, what aging veterans are out there that can probably fill the void at one of those spots and is willing to come in and take a 1 year or 2 year deal. So they're still looking right where they want to be. Obviously, they don't have enough money like they thought they would have. But again, a couple of the restructures and they're right back in the positive. So,
well, I'll say this, KD, and I'm going to ask you, but again, that salary cap figure of negative 800,000, if I was reading that right, okay, that's as of right now with the salary cap being at 242 or 43 million, whatever it was. But they are talking about the salary cap being adjusted to around 250, which will automatically put them over. That's probably going to be enough money for your draft class. When you go through your rookie, you have to have so much money set aside for your draft picks. Who would you say is probably between? Was it Agwabuke? Is that his name? Did I say that right?
No, you did. It's Matabike.
Okay. Oh, Matabike. I'm sorry. Between Matabike and Patrick Queen, if you were Baltimore and had to choose one or the other, which guy are you trying? Or which guy are you picking?
So I'm gonna pick Matabike. I'm gonna pick Matabike. Here's the reason why I'm gonna pick Matabike. I think Matabike's presence was underrated all year long. Whether it was his pressures, whether it was actually his 13.5 sacks. He was great in the run support and so forth. And I think instead of him being a complimentary piece, I think he was a staple piece, right? And we do have Travis Jones, we do have Broderick Washington. We got some guys that can come in and play defensive tackle. However, we don't have the guys that's going to generate the pass rush. And just like I know, if you can generate actual pass rush and disrupt plays from the interior of the defensive line, now you can essentially shut down almost half of the quarterback's pocket. So now you basically flush him out the back door or whatever it is, however you want to call it. So now when you do that, you basically just have somebody they got to win one-on-one between the other two guys on the opposite side. And if one of those guys can win, it's essentially you're trapping the quarterback and you get home. So case in point, that's why Baltimore led in pressures when it come down to, or if they didn't lead, they was one of the top teams in pressures and QB sacks. So again, he is probably the most integral piece of for the defense outside of like a player like a Roquan Smith.
Gotcha. Now, a couple other questions. The first one, looking at the draft, you're going to be losing Odell Beckham Jr. They did talk in the offseason about Rashad Bateman and both Devin Duvernay stepping up into the offense this year. I know, was it Duvernay who was hurt a lot last year, or was it Bateman?
Duvernay.
Yeah, Duvernay was hurt. So looking at these picks, you got 30th and 62nd, and you're already talking about losing a guy like Patrick Queen. With your first and second round picks, where do you think they go? What in those two picks? What do you look at as the most important position for them to acquire in those first two picks?
So it's some things that have to happen, right? So the late season acquisition of Dalvin Cook, if he doesn't come back and we lose Gus Edwards, and also we don't re-sign J.K. Dobbins, right? Which are all on the table right now, basically saying, hey, we have no running backs. The only running back we would have, or two running backs we would have, would be Justice Hill, which people don't think he's a bell cow running back. And I'm pretty sure, if you look at his workload, he's probably not, right? And then we have Keaton Mitchell, who's an undrafted rookie that got hurt last year as he started to surge. So, again, we have one injured running back, and we have one running back that is probably not going to be our lead back, right? So, again, that puts us in a pickle when it comes down to, okay, if we want a premier back, we have to make some kind of choices, whether we want to trade off draft picks for players, running backs that have bad contracts, that the team can pay them, but they come in and we pay half of their contract or whatnot, and now that particular player, we own the rights to that player, and that player can play out this 1 year, basically be a 1 year rental for us. We could do something like that, or we can turn around and say, okay, look, all right, we know there's not a big, humongous draft class of running backs right now when it comes down to, hey, the guys that can kind of give us, the first round grades or the second round grades, but we got some service running backs that can come out and deliver what we need them to deliver. Because again, we may not ask them to be the bell cow back, be a running back by committee, which is perfectly fine if you draft the right guys into that type of system.
Well, to that point, you got two running backs, one in the draft and one in free agency. Everybody's talked about Derrick Henry being the favorite to land in Baltimore. Obviously, he's not going to get the kind of contract he had with Tennessee. You're going to have cap money from restructures and the cap moving upward. So if you had to choose, and I'm just spitballing two names out here, Derrick Henry being one, or a guy like Braylon Allen, the running back, I believe he's from Wisconsin. I think that's where he's from. Where would you go in the draft if you had to choose between those two? Do you think Braylon Allen would be a good fit with the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah. He had some issues at some point in his career. So I'm not going to go high on my first two picks. In fact, I would even try and see if he's available around that 133rd pick, right? Because again, outside of maybe the top four running backs, there's not a lot of talks about running backs and so forth. Again, you got the kid from Notre Dame, you got Florida State running back, you got Ohio State running back, and then Michigan's running back. So basically, those four guys are kind of the nucleus of the running back committees that's out there. But then again, I just don't know if you want to turn around and bring in a Henry without the actual offensive line being shored up, because you need the offensive line to be shored up before you bring in a power back like that. Because again, I'm not saying that Derrick Henry's washed or nothing like that, but he's not going to get around in the backfield and do a lot of dancing. He's basically going to come down one cut and he's going to be trying to take off. And if he can't do that, if he can't turn around and say, okay, look, the hole is not there, now it's going to look like, hey, we have this guy, we can't move or punch a hole for him to get through, and then now he can get up and down the field and run, 60, 70 yards after contact.
Sure. And I'll ask you one more question. And I only ask this because of the situation with Zay Flowers, the off the field stuff. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if the charges haven't been filed. I have no idea. But that's always something to watch. So as of this moment, and it's not April yet, but if you're looking at the draft, and the situation with Flowers is still up in the air, touch and go, you don't know what's happening. At what point do you think, if the Ravens, even if they do, at what point do you think they look to target a wide receiver if something were to come up?
So my two priorities got to be has to be cornerback and an offensive lineman. So those first three picks, anything after that first three picks, anything can kind of go. And the reason why I say that is because although the wide receivers that we're going to draft to be needle movers or whatnot, if I'm looking at it at best, to just say at best, right? Just looking at what we just re-signed, we have Nelson Aguilar, Zay Flowers, and Rashad Bateman, right? Not even including Duvernay, not even including Tylan Wallace, right? So at best, we're asking this person to come in and be wide receiver 3. Let's just say at best, right? Because let's say he beats out Nelson Aguilar, Rashad, but he beats out one of them, right? So we're asking him to come in and be wide receiver 3. So even with that package, right, it's not a big package, right? So we're asking that guy to come in and do that. And I just don't think it's not going to be worth the squeeze unless we know for sure this guy's going to be wide receiver 1 or 2 if we draft him so early, right? However, we've had injuries along the tackle issue, the tackle position. So, with the right tackle and the left tackle, we've had them basically to where they had their own little packages to try and keep them healthy enough in games to make sure that, hey, we can have them for the playoffs. So I think, hey, look, if health becomes an issue, we need to basically have 2 assets that, hey, look, you can play right tackle, you can play left tackle. We have some of them, but they're developmental pieces. We got to get clean bills of health on some of them and so forth. But if we get clean bills of health and we draft a couple, so I think those guys, by the time, week 8 or 9 hit, those guys will be ready to go when it comes down to, hey, I got some reps. Maybe we had a couple of blowouts by then, and then we can turn around, put these guys in there, and then see how they respond.
Sure. All righty. Well, then let's move on. Let's go to the next team in the AFC North. I always do that. I don't know why. I'm so confused. Thank God I have all the teams' names here that I can go by. Otherwise, I'd forget who's in the AFC North.
It'll be some Pittsburgh Ravens.
The Baltimore Jaguars. I don't know what I meant. But anyway, right now we're going to move on to the Cincinnati Bengals. This team is flush with salary cap. They have $61 million. And like I said, if it goes up, they're going to be close to $70 million in salary cap. And it's a good thing this year because they have some they have a couple free agents that they need to re-sign. DJ Reader, T. Higgins is a huge one that they got to re-sign. And, even Jonah Williams, I look at that offensive line, and I think they need continuity on that line. So that might be an important sign, a re-sign for Cincinnati as well. Tyler Boyd, I love Tyler Boyd as a third wide receiver, but I don't think that's a priority, especially in this draft with the depth at receiver throughout the draft. I think they can find a replacement for the number 3 in the draft. And just taking a look at their draft picks, they got 1849. They got 9 draft picks overall. They got 3 in the top 100. Obviously, because they have first, second, and third round pick. I'm pretty smart like that. But really, their needs are the interior O line and interior D line, the cornerback, tight end, running back, wide receiver. So let's talk about that a little bit. And I'll probably refer to this chart because I don't really know the Bengals all that much. I should with what we do and we talk about them. But based on the Joe Burrow injury that he's going to be coming off of, and again, that the injury that affected Joe Burrow was not caused by the offensive line. It's not like he took some bad hit and was sacked 1,000 times. It was a calf injury that just progressively got worse and worse. And and then the thing with the wrist and the finger later on, I don't know if he did that hitting somebody's helmet or whatnot, but I think it was the ligament. It could have been just on a throw. So, again, we'll have to watch and see how that responds. But I do think their priority, at least for me, when I look at this Bengals team overall, I think strengthening the offensive line in the first round, and to me, it's either going to be the interior defensive line going second or a cornerback. I just look at them from the standpoint of their needs. Their defensive backfield, their secondary has to get a little stronger, especially having to deal with the Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. And again, even the Pittsburgh Steelers, depending on what they do quarterback-wise, which we'll discuss later on. But I think you're going to have a strong defense, a strong secondary in that division because that division's, coming on pretty strong. I mean, you look at the things that happened. But like I said, the cap situation for the Bengals is fantastic. I think they got to be smart in how they spend. Joe Mixon, for all intents and purposes, is a free agent. I don't even know if he was on that list. But that's another position where you have to look and say to yourself, is this guy, is he a priority, and how much is he going to want? Because we understand the running back market being depressed like it's been the last couple of years, what he wants to get and what they're willing to spend on a running back. And in some ways, I think this might be an actual good year for a Joe Mixon to hit free agency, because I don't think there's that 2 or 3 can't miss running backs in that draft. So, where you looked at last year, you had, Charbonnet, you had Tajay Spears, you had Jamar Gibbs, you had Bijan Robinson. In this draft, you don't really have that breakout running back who's going to get you that, who's going to be that do-all type of running back. So in the case of Joe Mixon, whether it's by happenstance or whatnot, he's probably picked himself a good year to be a free agent, because I do think that he's going to probably get a little more money than Cincinnati or another team might have wanted to spend, just because the collective total of the running backs that are going to be either free agents or in the draft are not going to be what they've been in years past. So, it might be a good year for him. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, if I'm them, I'm not worried about my offense, because again, I think those guys are kind of want to stay around with Joe Burrow, right? But I will tell you, the defense is totally different without DJ Reader, right?
Right.
So when it comes down to it, is we talking about, hey, we can't stop the run, we can't generate pass rush. It's just a lot, because again, you're just going to have the guards and tackles attack Hendrickson and Hubbard. Right, which, by the way, I think they're underrated pass rush duo, right? But I will tell you, if you have double teams on both of those guys and nobody else can win their matchup because you get rid of DJ Reader or you let him go, that's going to spell trouble for you. The other reason why it's going to spell trouble for you is because you have one linebacker that's probably worth it, which is Logan. Pratt is giving up big plays at times, has came down and missed tackles, has taken the wrong angles, and it's just not good. Okay, and then the other guy, Gaither Davis, who's on the list, he's also pending free agency, right? So if you allow that guy to leave along with DJ Reader, I think you have to almost immediately replace those guys, because if not, it's just not going to bode well for you. In Joe Mixon's case, I think Chase Brown gave them some good running back play at times when they got leads, or when Joe Mixon went out of the game. They got a little bit of hope when it comes down to, okay, look, all right, if he goes down or if he's not effective, we have a secondary option, right? So I think the first pick or the first move outside of obviously your nucleus for your offense, it got to be DJ Reader. It has to be securing DJ Reader, because I see some of the websites. They were basically saying Justin Madubuike was going to come to Cincinnati because that's a big need for them if they lose DJ Reader.
Right, and I totally forgot about Chase Brown. That's right. He did have some good games when Joe Mixon was down, and he was the kind of guy who could get in between tackles and make plays happen. Absolutely, I forgot about him altogether. The one thing I will ask you, and the way we see the draft and the way we see things, I've done a couple mock drafts. I've seen a couple mock drafts. In Cincinnati, let me just make sure I got this pick right. They pick 18th, so I just wanted to get that right. Could you see a scenario where they might move up a spot or two if a guy like Brock Bowers, the tight end, is available? Depending on what they do free agency wise, you don't see them doing that to add that dimension to their offense, to have a guy like that. Unmute yourself. You're muted.
Yeah, but that's not what your offense is missing. You got me? What my offense is missing is the strong element for the run game. Meaning, I'm talking about, hey, okay, yeah, I got Joe Burrow, I have T. Higgins, I have Tyler Boyd, I have Jamar Chase, right? But what happens when I don't get the plays that I need to get? Can I rely on my run game to go out and execute on a 15-play drive we run it 11 times and we get 60 yards, right? Can I do that 2 times out of a game? And I think right now it's a question mark, right? So if that's a question mark, right? I'm not going to sit here and necessarily say, hey, okay, look, Bowers is the wrong move. I'm going to tell you that he's an actual need for some other teams, if that makes sense to you. And for them, it's a luxury, not a need.
Yeah, well, no, like I said, I just looked at it from the standpoint that, because I have a feeling one of those guys, Tyler Boyd, is probably gonna test free agency. He's probably gonna be he's probably going to be gone. Because I think if they franchise tag T. Higgins, Boyd is going to be the odd man out in terms of spending money on wide receivers. So my whole thing, I guess, with the Brock Bowers thing is, number one, I think if the Bengals were to get Brock Bowers, I think it would give, because let's face it, as good of a running game as the Bengals had with Joe Mixon, as good as Chase Brown was last year, and so on, regardless of the backs back there, Joe Burrow's the drop back passer. That's what makes the offense go, is the T. Higgins, Jamar Chase tandem, and along with Tyler Boyd. And I look at that offense and I say to myself, if there's one area outside of the interior line or the interior defense from an offensive standpoint that I can improve myself and give my quarterback that option that he doesn't have at this point, a guy like Brock Bowers not only lines up as the tight end, he lines up as the slot receiver, and he's even big enough that he can line up outside. And you can create mismatches on your offense that way. And while it might be a luxury pick, sometimes I just look at that he is just that good that he can make that kind of difference to give your quarterback like a Joe Burrow that extra option. So that's why I just brought it up. And then, of course, Jamie said that Daniel Jeremiah did a mock draft and mocked him to the Bengals, which I had no idea of. So I don't want to be called I just thought of it.
Well, I look at the order of the draft. This is where I look at this is how I do things. So I look at the order of the draft and I look at, hey, okay, look, all right. If we don't have good tackle play, we have, let's say, mid-grade tackle play, right? I can attach him to the line to help block, right? Mm-hmm. Or if I want that passing element to my offense, I'm going to tell you 3 teams that I know right now that are in need of that, right? The first team would be the New England Patriots, right? New England Patriots need that. They're needy for a tight end, right? The Bears don't need one. The Washington Commanders don't need one. I'll tell you the Tennessee Titans. That's the element that they had that they lost. They don't have that element no more in losing Jonnu Smith, right? And then the last team, I'll just put it out there, it would be the New York Jets. Again, if they have a run on wide receivers, because I'm pretty sure I would think they would go offensive linemen or either wide receivers. If they can't get either one of the guys that they want, I would guarantee you they would probably say, okay, look, if we can get that particular position in our offense back and being that, again, that both of those tackles were struggling, that would be the prime spot to go to, especially with Aaron Rodgers if he's healthy. So again, right off rip, those 3 teams is like, hey, look, if he's available, yeah, they may not was in the fold for him because they probably thought he was going to be gone. But I can almost assure you, if he comes down the draft board and he's there, they're going to probably already go ahead. So.
I look at the Jets as a team that I just think, and I know we talked about them yesterday, so I don't want to go back, but I just look at them as a team that I think in the first round, I think their pressing need is offensive line, and again to protect. I don't think the Jets are in the position yet to take the luxury pick. If the Jets had a solid offensive line, if Mekhi Becton wasn't a free agent, if they didn't sour on him, if he had performed, I would say, okay, this is a spot where you can look at a Roman Duze or a Brock Bowers and say that would be a kind of pick that Aaron Rodgers could use, but you have to have protection for Aaron Rodgers at all costs. So that's just why I look at the Jets in that light. And again, unless they go out and they find an offensive tackle, guard, or whatever they need in free agency where they can, look in another direction, because free agency hasn't started yet. And again, we're just not talking about it too much until we know pretty much who's out there, who's really available, how much cap space teams have, so on and so forth. So, but I just look at that team. The one team that I could say ahead of the Bengals here that could probably use a guy like what's his name, Brock Bowers, is somebody that I thought was going to take Dalton Kincaid last year, and that would be the San Diego Chargers, especially with Jim Harbaugh's offense, giving Justin Herbert another weapon. I think that they've been lacking at tight end. I mean, they had Gerald Everett for the last 2 years after they traded Hunter Henry, but I think to upgrade that offense and get it to where it needs to be, I could see a team like San Diego or the LA Chargers, maybe looking at him too. But, again, we'll see. It's just all conjecture at this point, but this team has a couple holes, but but they do have a lot of money that can help in their free agency quest to fill some of those outside of the draft. So that's what we'll look at. So, Katie, I'm going to kick it over to you. We're going to go the Browns of Cleveland, and take it away, buddy.
All right. So the Cleveland Browns, they're in cap hell due to, some bad contracts, particularly one with Mr. Watson. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how they get in front of these things, because, again, I think he's due $60 million. If I remember correctly, the last restructure he did, basically he was allotted. It started out at $40 million, and then it ballooned to $60 million. So that's going to be real, real interesting when it comes down to how they're going to get underneath the cap and be able to sign their draft class. So I've seen some GMs basic stuff to be able to do it, and I'm not doubting their ability. But you do have some guys that are at key positions for them. I don't know how much they view these guys as contributors or how they can replace them in free agency. The notable guys are Zadarius Smith, Joe Flacco, Taki, Kareem Hunt, Anthony Walker, and Shelby Harris. Again, this is one of those teams that pride themselves on having a good defensive line. And if they don't have a good defensive line, part of the reason they're so good is because you pair people with Myles Garrett, and now we can basically say, look, go win your one-on-ones. Or if you win your one-on-ones and Garrett doesn't beat his double team or doesn't beat his one-on-one, now we can turn around and we can have a good pass rush without overcommitting 6 or 5 people to commit every time. If I can get home with a 4-man blitz, that I'm in hog heaven when it comes down to blitzing, right? The next step would be get somebody to pair with JOK. Right, if you're going to lose Taki, you need to, because again he kind of played that role when it comes down to the sidekick to him. You got to hurry up and get that particular void fixed. Not saying hey he was playing at an all-pro level or nothing like that, but he was serviceable enough to where hey he was coming up and making plays and so forth. And then the other thing that Cleveland, if I'm Cleveland, I need somebody to help take the pressure off Amari Cooper and Njoku. A lot of the offensive linemen were hurt last year. If those guys don't have clean bills of health, you got to hurry up and grab your offensive line because again they're picking what
54. They don't have a pick until 54.
Right. So again a good bit of holy crap, and then you don't have another one. See their picks are too spaced out, and then at the end. So in the 204, 209, 227, that's a good range to have picks, but you got to hit on all of them, right? Because you're so spaced out. So again, it's gonna take some really, really good scouting, and you're gonna have to say, hey, look, I can't go for best player available. I got to go for somebody that's gonna fix the need that I have. Because if not, you're essentially basically saying, hey, look, how do I mask a particular need that I have now? Their defensive coordinator had the guys playing lights out. So he's probably one of the more equipped defensive coordinators that can do that can kind of mask, hey, I don't have a star studded linebacker core, or I don't have a star studded interior defensive lineman core. But by playing this type of coverage or blitzing this type of we can turn around and say, hey, look, you said it, not me. So again,
I like honest Browns fans. They're good.
Right.
Honesty.
Right. And my whole thing is I just feel like just when they think they're like, hey, we're right there. We're one or two players, whether it be offense or defensive, we're one or two players away from taking the division and going to the playoffs, or probably going to the AFC Championship or whatever it may be. And then right at, in a certain time that injury bug hits. And it sucks because it was wide receivers at one point. They didn't have wide receivers. Then it got to the injury O-line. And then this year it hit Chubb. It's just like, man, it's like, can they ever get a break? Can they ever get a break? Go ahead.
And I was just going to ask you about that because, here's the reality. I mean, they have Jerome Ford, and Jerome Ford is a decent running back. No doubt about it. And he proved that this year that he can be a 75% guy when it comes to running because
right.
Kareem Hunt was in the game, but he was used sparingly. He was used a little bit at the goal line, but Jerome Ford proved that he could be that guy. And with Chubb's injury and him coming back, there's no definite answer if he's going to be ready regular first game, middle of the season, or he might be out for another year. I don't know the severity of it, but I do believe that backup running back or that second running back role is going to be key for them as well. And I just look at this team based on what they gave up and what they're reaping what they've sown with the Deshaun Watson trade, not picking until 54th.
Right.
That I believe that this team is going to fade this year. I think they just have a lack of salary cap space, too many holes to fill, too many free agents come and do at the wrong time for them. And being able to fit all those, I think they're going to rely heavily on a 7-pick draft, which those draft picks don't come until, mid-second. And then, like you said, that cluster between the 6th and 7th round there. So it's going to be interesting.
Or now they could do the unthinkable and undraft it too. Because like, let's remember, there are some players that are project viewed could be some diamonds in the rough.
Absolutely.
So again, like for instance, like Baltimore found Keaton Mitchell undrafted, but he was a bright spot for a good bit of time in our offense until he got hurt, right? So again, I'm just sitting there saying, like, it's not like, hey, you can't obtain some of it. It's just a matter about how much are you going to have to mask,
right? Because
again, you can't fix everything.
And again, to your point, I think they have the coaching on the defensive side, and that's the one thing that's overlooked a lot of these conversations. You talk about all these team needs, but if you have the proper coaching, you have players who were backups last year who might not have started, but were in spot starts here and there or spot duty. They're going to have this year under this system. So those players who were in the background have had a year in this system, know this system, and are going to be asked to step up. And you have a coordinator like a Jim Schwartz who can get the best out of his players in those situations. I don't think it's going to be as detrimental as people think, but I just think, Elijah Moore is going to be coming back this year. He got hurt in the playoff game or the game before the playoffs, which hurt Cleveland in that playoff game. So he'll be back. They got the Donovan Peoples-Jones, I believe he's still there. I don't know. You got David Njoku, who's just come on in the last 2 years, has been a beast of a tight end and a target for the quarterbacks in Cleveland altogether. But yeah, I think the Sion Takitaki free agent, that's going to be tough to fill. I think he's really played lights out the last 2.5 years in Cleveland. I think he's really been the heart of that defense next, and JOK really came on. I think this year was like the first year you really saw JOK's dominance in his role, because I think, again, with the coordinator, he put him into that position that allowed him to be more comfortable in his role. So definitely, I do think that they do need more offensive weapons around Deshaun Watson, though. And they do need an offensive line to keep him protected. Because he's taken a couple shots the last 2 years that have limited him in Cleveland, and he's got to get his shoulder back in shape, and he's got to perform for him. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. DPJ did go to the Lions. Tillman, that's right. It was Tillman that you have. I apologize, Jamie. I'm a year behind, man. I'm still in 2022. But no, like I said, I just think it's this team still has coaching, and that's the one key that we forget and that we don't talk about when we talk about players.
Well, the bright spot would, well, I wouldn't say the bright spot, because the bright spot people would know it. The telltale sign is their secondary, right? So their secondary, having the guys that they have, I just think those guys are going to take on the whatever Newsome wants to do, and I think he's pretty physical. He's pretty sound, so I think they're going to take on that particular role, right? So you would be able to do something that you can't normally do with the secondary when it comes down to, we're working on our craft. We're going to basically be accountable. We got to be smart defenders and so forth and so on, right? We can cover in the area. We can cover an actual man. What doesn't matter, right? It just, again, your front seven have to get home or influence the play enough to make an errant throw or to make a throw come out early or whatever it may be, so your defenders can either pass break up or intercept the ball. Because, again, yeah, it's cool that they're covering down the field, but if I can't stop anybody, now we're talking, hey, okay, look, I got great coverage. However, the dude's running right behind me as I'm running down the field covering the wide receiver. Now I got to turn around and I got to go into tackling mode. So I just think, again, you got to get somebody else that's going to help, because, again, with what's it, Schwartz, the DC?
Yeah, Jim Schwartz. Yep.
So Schwartz, again, I can't send my best linebacker on the blitz, because, again, those other guys just not going to be able to cover the field laterally like I need them to, right? So again, as good as Taki has been, as good as Walker has been at times, they're not JOK, right? So again, that's why I said, like, I would want somebody that can come in and help do some of the stuff that he's doing. A person of interest with me would be the kid from North Carolina State, Wilson, Peyton Wilson, would be a good marriage made in heaven to put him and JOK there. Because then he can come in and just take your time, do what you're doing, and once we get you a clean bill of health, you can go ahead and be JOK's assassin. So,
let me ask you about this, because maybe it's the name. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with everybody out there. I don't watch college football that much. I watch it a little bit, but I know. Yep. Yeah, we do, Anthony. Absolutely. We do know that the Cleveland Browns are. As a matter of fact, I will bring it up and show you, just so you don't think that we're like going off blind, talk here. They are negative 20 million. Okay. But like I have always talked about, that number is fictitious. That number can be wiped away by the stroke of a pen, by creative accounting. All that negative becomes positive. And with the salary cap supposedly going to be going up to around 250 million from the 243 that it's set at right now, you're going to take 7 million more off the top of that. So they'll only be about negative 13. So the cap number, while it is important always, there are ways for these teams to get creative. No, Watson, they can't change Watson's contract. The only thing they can do with Deshaun Watson, because no matter what happens, that $250 million is guaranteed. The only thing they can do with Deshaun Watson's contract is to add more years onto the 5 that he signed it for, and basically make them voidable years, so that you turn around and you still give him his money. You convert that into a signing bonus, and then you spread that out over the last 2 years of those voidable years, but then it comes due at the tail end of the contract. So that's really all you can do with Deshaun Watson at this point to bring that cap number down to a less than $60 million hit that he's due this year.
So the two things that they can do, just looking at their numbers right now, I pulled it up. Denzel Ward, they can probably restructure. Jedrick Willis. I don't know how many more years they have without pulling it up individually. And then possibly you could probably look at Chubb, right? You could probably try and restructure those three guys and get a good chunk of this gone, right? Don't know if they'll get all of it gone, but it'll be a good chunk of it. So
right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So there are definitely ways. Yeah, Anthony, you're right. Cleveland did give up their soul, and you know, it's not that it's not that they didn't need a good quarterback. It's the contract that they gave him, along with the picks they gave up. Because now not only are they in need of players, they are in need of draft picks, and they don't have the resources to do anything other than sit at 54 and watch 53 good players go before them. So again, it's a tough road when you guarantee $250 million contract over 5 years. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah. So Anthony, we said Chubb won't do that because he is the offense, but he's injured right now. So again, if there's hey, okay, look, all right, man, you restructure now and then we pay you later. Some players would do that, right? I'm not sitting here saying that, hey, he has to do it, but if he doesn't do it, there's some other players that would do it, right? Because I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to have to make a decision to do this and go through cap hell or take a rebuild. And if they don't, you're going to lose players like Njoku, who's coming up on a contract. He's on a $1.5 million contract, right? You have a couple of your linemen. You have Grant Delpit that's on $1 million contract, right? So you got all these guys that's playing lights out for you that's going to want payday in a couple of years. And if you're in $44 million minus on the cap, then guess what? You're going to lose those guys.
Well, and see that, and the saddest part about that is the guys that you could restructure or extend are already at such a low cap number to begin with that you're not going to get the relief. Like if Njoku's on a $1.5 million contract, that's pretty much the veteran minimum. So even if they were to extend Njoku, you are not getting any cap relief at all in that extension. You know,
and I'm gonna tell you, you got Greg Newsome too. Greg Newsome is on a $2.5 million. So I can tell you right now, if Greg Newsome is anywhere in the top 10 again as the top corner, he's going to demand big money. He's going to demand big money.
Yeah. Oh, you're exactly right. And so to keep those guys, you can renegotiate their contracts, give them bigger contracts, take the $1.5 million or the $1 million or $1.5 million that they're making in base salary right now, and give them larger contracts to keep them on your team for years. Turn that signing bonus into the front so it doesn't really count against your cap, and they can spread it out if you want to try to do that. But you got to get under the cap first before you can do anything with those guys. And the reality is the only real contract, besides the ones you had mentioned about, the only ones that you're really going to be able to do anything to effectively get under your cap, just like the same with Buffalo and these other teams that are cash strapped with high salaried quarterbacks. The only thing you're really going to be able to do is to really redo their deals and either extend them and turn base salary, lower their base salary, extend them into a signing bonus, and put voidable years at the end and kick the can on the contract. That's pretty much all you're going to be able to do.
So this is the last thing I want to mention, right? And then we can move on, right? So over the next 3 years, this is the thing that's hurting Cleveland, right? The next 3 years, Deshaun Watson is $63 million cap hits, right? So even if they wanted to jump off of it, it is a cap hit, right? So again, that's the stuff that's binding you to this particular situation. And it sucks because, again, if you don't get to the 63 million, right, you're gonna basically lose everything you got if you don't get to that 63 million every year. If you were to try and get rid of if you get wow.
Don't worry, that's just Sean. I know who that guy
okay.
is. Don't worry about it.
Because I was about to say, wow, what do we do to this church group?
I think group. It might be the church, but you shouldn't say those kind of words under church and group. That's why our show is so close to being canceled all the time. He puts on White Mountain Church Group and then says, "You guys suck." Wow, that's so un-Catholic of you. All right, I'm gonna hold off the Pittsburgh conversation because Eric's gonna be jumping on, and I'll let him discuss his Pittsburgh Steelers. But again, I don't know a lot about the cap per se. Anthony, the church group is just our guy Sean, and he's just and he's just messing around with us. But he had to go under church group because he wanted to say worse stuff probably, but he didn't want to use his name.
Right. I was about to say, like, whoa, what did I do to the church group?
I want the church group member to come on and sing a gospel hymn for us. But no,
wow.
But no, like I'm saying, I don't know a lot about the cap, but I do know that the creative ways that these teams do things, pushing money down, turning things into signing bonuses so you can prorate and spread that out over the life of. The problem is with a contract like Deshaun Watson's, where it's $250 million guaranteed. The only way you are going to get cap relief is you have to take that 5-year contract from this point forward, because he's already fulfilled 2 of the 5. He's got the 3 years left. They've got to do another 2-year extension where those years are voidable to be able to take that money. And let's say they want to make it a $30 million cap hit and have $30 million go on to a signing bonus. Then you can take that $6 million over the next 5 years, or that $30 million over the next 5 years, and turn it to $6 million spread out on top of his base salary. So then the following year would be $56 million if he's owed that much. The following year after that would be $56. And the cap goes up every year, as we know, so the load might get a little lighter, but it doesn't make the number any better. It's disgusting.
This is how janky that contract is. He went to the injured reserve and got $19 million.
What's that?
That's how janky that contract is. He went to the injured reserve and got $19 million.
Yep, exactly. Again, I would have to look at how the ramifications for Amari Cooper trade would work in the salary cap, because the only thing you got to remember about any trades is if a player has guaranteed money and they trade him, the dead money gets pushed to this year's salary cap. So let's say Amari Cooper has a $40 million contract, and 30 million of it is guaranteed, and he's been on the team 2 years, and they still owe him 15 million plus his base salary. So if they owe him 15 million and his base salary is 9 million, he would count $24 million against the cap this year. So you would have to look at what savings you're getting from trading Amari Cooper, if it's more cost prohibitive to keep him or trade him. I don't know his contract, so that's why I'm just saying I would have to look at the contract and find out where it's prohibitive or not.
What up, E?
How's it going tonight, guys?
We saved the worst for last. Wait, I'm sorry. Did I say that? Oh, God.
How dare you?
There's goes dogs again. Every time we start talking about Pittsburgh, his dogs start barking. Even they don't like him.
No, she's just excited to see him because he's gone all the time. So it's the dogs. So.
Yeah.
How's it going, guys? So we're at Cleveland, right?
Yeah, we're just finishing up Cleveland. You got any thoughts on Cleveland?
I think that they're going to have to, and I think we probably mentioned it, they're going to probably have to face the decision of can they build around Watson and what do they want to do? Do they want to hold on to this core? I know you were talking about Cooper. Do they want to hold on to these aging guys around and make a run at it, or do they want to? Because eventually, just like Buffalo, you got to face these decisions eventually. And do you want to? Is now the time where you have to take a step back to take a step forward, or do you want to delay that and do that next year or the year after? I mean, that's the problem with the voidable years and the contracts and all that stuff. But the Watson situation is going to come someday. It's a matter of today or tomorrow.
Well, again, I'm not even going to get into this because you had to bring Buffalo into it for no reason. But I look at when I look at salary caps, and I'm going to let you talk. But when I look at salary caps, and this ain't nothing about Buffalo. It's every team. What you do is you look at their salary cap projections for the next 2 or 3 years. And then you see where teams who put the voidable years on look at that. Well, if I can push it out to here and the salary cap is projected to be at here, and I'm going to be here at the salary cap today, I can afford to push that down the line. There's some teams who can't do that because of the guarantee that they give and all that other stuff. So again, you just got to look at the cap, not from year one not from today, but you got to look at if they're pushing it down the line, what does their cap look like in 2 or 3 years? And does that team have the luxury to do that? If the team looks at their cap, and I'll say Buffalo because you brought it up, but in 3 years, Buffalo has $130 million based on the cap projections today. So they can turn around and say, okay, I can take $6 million or I can take, 17 million and spread it out over 5 years because I know I'll have $130 million down the line in that. But again, it doesn't work for every team. And you're right. They do kick the can, but they kick the can every year.
You'll have a lot of needs when you have that.
Sure. I get it.
So you're building, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, well, we're going to have to figure out how to maneuver our way to take care of the needs that we have because we're delaying the process. How did KD stand with the Watson cap hit? What was his thing?
Well, he's worth $63 million this year. So
his cap hit for the next 3 years is $63 million, no matter how you slice it. The only thing that you can do, I don't know why anybody would, is if you were to trade him and somebody agrees to pay a portion of that. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't know why anybody would do it, but if they did it,
I got to call timeout on that, and this is why, and this is what we need to understand: guaranteed contracts. Teams cannot trade; they can only trade and only take the hit off for the base salary. And unfortunately, in the case of Deshaun Watson today, because that entire contract is a guaranteed contract. If they traded Deshaun Watson today, the Cleveland Browns would owe Deshaun Watson a $183 million cap hit would be charged to their cap today because it's guaranteed. You can't trade cap dollars. You can only, and that's his base salary. The only way Cleveland can get out of this large cap is to add years to his contract, turn the top part into a signing bonus, turn half of his salary or whatever it is into a signing bonus, and then spread it out over the life of the cap. But because that's a guaranteed contract, you can't do it.
Here's the problem.
And I'm not gonna do the extra years because what has he given me?
Yep. So
again, and that's why Cleveland's stuck.
The Browns, Jake is right. The Browns are the dumbest organization in football. So this guy hadn't played football in a couple of years, right or wrong, no matter what's going on, he hadn't played football. And so he comes in and you give all these first-round picks to Houston. So you've basically rebuilt the Houston Texans for them. Mm-hmm. So thanks. And then you give this guy all this money, and then you restructure his contract to try to make a run out of it. And you end up with Joe Flacco losing in the first round. That's the most painful thing I've ever heard. So, 63, $200 million dead cap hit.
Yep.
I mean, what I would do if I was Cleveland and this was smart and I had this team, I would suck for the next 3 years. I would try to stockpile draft picks and I would try to build and play these rookies and play these young guys. And I would try to let go of my or let go of my.
Yeah. That's what, Eric, this is what we need more of. We need more of honest fans of teams, not like people like you who sprouts and spew your propaganda.
You propaganda yourself.
I think you've been hacked by the Russians.
Hey, matter of fact, that's probably the way to get out from underneath it. We haven't talked it. Do you trade away some of your defensive pizzas?
My thing would be is to hire a massage therapist and then cut him for cause and then have to void his contract.
Yeah, he could void his contract if he gets in trouble.
That clears the cap real quick. I'm just saying. I mean,
hey, that's some espionage stuff that we're going to get banned for. We're promoting bad behavior here.
Either that or have the training staff stick some PEDs in his stuff, and then you can cut him because he violated the terms of his contract and all that kind of good stuff.
Let me know if you fix it.
Anyway, let's get off of that now. So Eric is here, and we saved the worst for last, or the in the alphabetical order. So Eric, we're going to talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers. Have at it, buddy.
So they're -4 or 4.305.901, which is where they're at. I'm not sure how correct that is based off of Katie. Didn't they just cut some Mitch Trubisky and all that stuff? Is that accurate after these guys got cut last week?
That was after.
Okay,
yeah,
that's after.
I made this.
Okay, so that's after they cut these guys. So Chooks is gone. Okorafor, Levi Wallace wasn't worth much. Montravius Adams is a contributor, and Quan Alexander was good when he was there, but he has coming off a couple Achilles injuries and knee injury. So they have some good draft picks. They've got needs. Quarterback's the biggest one. You can't compete in this league without elite quarterback play, and they were able to make the playoffs with subpar quarterbacks. Interior line, Mason Cole was snapping into the dirt and wasn't playing very well. Cornerback, they need somebody outside of Joey Porter Jr. to cover on the outside. Patrick Peterson is cooked. Wide receiver 3 is an issue because, well, they have Deontay Johnson and they have George Pickens, but really nobody behind him. In defensive line, Cameron Hayward is as old as time. So they need to address some of these things here for them. Now, they have enough draft picks to probably address 2 or 3 of these things, but they need to be creative with their accounting. And creative with their accounting is a guy like Cam Hayward you could extend or restructure. I would extend him a couple years. He is 35, but defensive linemen can hang around a little longer. I would cut Patrick Peterson because he's not worth anything, and he's got a $10 million cap hit. Allen Robinson didn't bring you anything with a $10 million cap hit. That frees up $16 million for you to spend right off the bat, including the -4. And then with the Cam Hayward restructure, you could probably fit in about 12 to 15, and you could probably bring in a couple of impact players. Draft-wise, I do not think they go quarterback at 20 because I think the quarterbacks that are worth in the first round will be gone by then. I do not think they go for a Justin Fields because that's not really their way. So I think they end up probably – and we don't know what pick it'll be completely without Matt Canada because he only had one game, but we're probably going to suck with Matt Canada. The same thing. We're probably going to suck with Kenny Pickett for a year while we figure out if he can fit in Arthur Smith's system, unless we're able to get Russell Wilson really cheap or get some sort of veteran like that. Which I agree, Jake. If we can get Russell Wilson, he has connections to the organization. I think that would be a hit because I think he could make them compete with the picks they have. So moving forward with that, we'll see what happens. I'm interested to see what you guys think, but financially, they should have some money to spend.
Well, let me ask you this, because there's been the trade rumors of Justin Fields going here, going there, and Pittsburgh's been mentioned. So what would you feel about that? And what would be the proper package to send to Chicago if you were to acquire a guy like Justin Fields?
I'm a historian, so I like to compare where things are to where how to get there kind of thing. In 2004, they went 6-10, and with Tommy Maddox at quarterback. And during that year, they had a really good team, but just really poor quarterback play. So they built their team. They built their offensive line with Faneca. They had a great team around Maddox. I did not know he played for the Bengals. That's pretty cool. That's a cool stat there. Thanks, Jamie. I didn't look that deep into Pickens' heritage, but that's cool. Honestly, I built the team around until he found the quarterback in the draft. Just like when Ben came in, Ben had a great team around him, which allowed them to go 15-1 and then win the Super Bowl the second year. So if you continue to build the offensive line, which isn't bad, it needs a center that doesn't snap into the dirt, and they need another tackle instead of Roger Jones because Dan Moore's a turnstile unless he's playing Myles Garrett. Honestly, that's what I would do. Is I'd probably get a tackle, and I would address that in the first round if you can get one. And then center, Zach Frazier's there. Jackson Powers-Johnson would be a good fit at center if those are the first-round guys you can pick. But that would require them to sign a tackle because they need another tackle to go with. Allow Roger Jones to move back into his left tackle spot.
So let me ask you this too, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Are you prepared to go a season with Kenny Pickett, knowing or having the feeling? And I know you still have Mason Rudolph. Now, is Mason Rudolph a free agent?
He's a free agent, so he's their priority, and he's who I would pick because of the money.
Right. But all things being equal, would you sacrifice the 20-year streak of Pittsburgh having winning records to go 6-11?
So
to rebuild your team and keep Pickens on your roster for another year?
To answer that question, I would, and I think with Kenny Pickett, I think they will, and I think they'll give him the opportunity because we don't know if it was Canada or if we don't know if it was Pickett. When Pickett had one game, they didn't score a lot, but he threw 300 yards, and they had I think 500 total against the Bengals. And he looked pretty good. And then he got hurt in the Arizona game. And so we really don't know the full picture of him. I would not trade my second round and a third round for Justin Fields. It would have to be one or the other. I mean, be a third and a fourth or a second. That price tag's too high for me. But I don't want Tannehill either. He's cooked. I mean, that's like bringing in Patrick Peterson. I'm tired of these cooked guys. They can't do much anymore at 36, 37 years old. So, I mean, that's like going and, like I made the Dodge Dart comparison. That's going to go buy a Challenger and ending up with a damn Dodge Dart driving around. I don't want that. I would be happy with seeing what Pickett can do and building the team around him. Because honestly, they're 9 or they went 9-8 and now they're 10-7. So they showed a little bit of progression with bad quarterback play, and they've got a pretty good team that can win games outside of that and creatively win games. Let's see what happens.
Go ahead, KD.
Man, I hate to do this because that means I got to give you some love as a Steelers fan, and I hate doing this. As a matter of fact, I threw up a couple of times in my mouth talking about the Bengals and the Browns, but it's okay. All right. So look, even if you say, hey, okay, look, I don't want to take the savvy veteran, right? I don't want to go out and grab a Mike Evans, right? I want to go in and get guys that can be Steelers, right? I want to get the young nucleus that can grow together, right? So the next 5 years, we can make some noise in the AFC North, some true legit noise, right? For years to come, right? So it's two guys that I'm going to tell you that I would grab if I was the Steelers, and they're ripe for the picking for your situation because I believe you guys can develop them to what you want them to be. Not be Patrick Mahomes, not be Lamar Jackson, what you want, what you need to have. And there's two guys that are probably low enough to where you can grab them. You don't have to break the bank to get them. Joe Milton from Tennessee, who's a dual threat, has a great deep ball, right? Pretty smart. It's pretty smart as a QB, right? I think Tomlin would do wonders with him, right? And then the next guy would be Devontae Walker out of North Carolina. 6'3", 209, 212 pounds, something like that, right? But you guys are known for developing wide receivers, right? So again, if you get both of those guys and you pair them with what you already have, even if you roll with Kenny Pickett this year, right? You say, all right, man, okay, Kenny Pickett's show is over come year 2. but now you let Joe Milton sit there and get what he needs to get. So now when we come next season, the following season, we can have a quarterback competition. And if he beats him, now we are where we need to be. Then if you do that, right, you don't have to, frustrate yourselves about trying to get these guys in early on picks. You can concentrate on rebuilding the offensive line. So now these guys are 1 year older in the offense. So now I have a quarterback change, and it's cool. It's fine, because guess what? I've grown this quarterback into getting into the particular situation. But now if that doesn't go well, Kenny Pickett can grow in this situation, right? And if you give him multiple options, because again, I think if you have Freiermuth, who's healthy the whole time, I think your offense is a little bit different, right? And because again, what happens is your defense is having to come in and play lights out every stinking week just for you to win the game 17-13, right? And I just think that gets old really quickly every week, having to do that.
Well, and I know I give Kenny Pickett crap, but look, here's the facts. I don't truly, honestly think that Kenny Pickett's ceiling is 6 touchdowns a year. But again, we look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think like I said a couple weeks ago about appreciating what you had. And it's just the fact that when I look at Pittsburgh and you look at the Big Ben years and you look at the receivers they had with Hines Ward, you look at Antonio Brown, you look at Plaxico Burress, all those guys, and Pickens, George Pickens has that talent to be one of those guys. He has the talent to be that number one guy. What you have to do with a guy like George Pickens is check his ego. He has to stop complaining, and he has to start playing football. Okay. He can't be the diva on a team where, sure, he might get 1,000 yards, but he has 2 touchdowns and complain about everybody on his team. He's got to embrace the team as a whole. You win as a team, you lose as a team, period. And until Tomlin and the offensive guys in the receiver room get that guy under control and say, listen, it's not just about you, it's about the team. And they had that issue with AB. Granted, it happened after he got hit in the head a couple times, and maybe he was already having his issues with that. But I do think that you have to. And I think when that happens and they allow Kenny Pickett to take more responsibility or more charge of that offense, and the players understand, because like they said, when Mason Rudolph came in, Mason Rudolph commanded that huddle. The players knew that Mason Rudolph was the guy in charge. And I think Kenny Pickett has to develop into that quarterback who's like, I'm in charge of this huddle. I'm in charge of, and you need to have that same respect for me. And that's the thing I think that is lacking with Kenny Pickett at this point, is just that ability to take charge.
Dave, I don't disagree. And in the chat, I think I mentioned that. I think that he's not the alpha in the room, and I think other quarterbacks not being the alpha in the room is part of the problem. I think the quarterback has to be the alpha nowadays. And so to answer a couple questions in the chat, I would be okay if this year they said, you know what, we're going to bring in competition for Pickett. We're going to see what we have. We're going to wait a year. We're going to draft Joe Milton in the 5th round, and Gardner Minshew came in. And so we go Pickett, Minshew, and Milton in the 5th round. I do think we end up with, if Jeff is watching, and I'm sure he's listening, I do think we end up with Tez Walker in the 2nd round. And I think it's going to happen. And when he scores a touchdown in the playoffs against y'all, just know we're wearing our Tez Walker jerseys together and singing Kumbaya, two bald bearded guys. So I'm looking forward to that day. That's going to happen. Just like I called the 10-7 shot, which I was awful close. But
Oh God.
No. But
that's like getting the 2-for-1 cheeseburgers at McDonald's.
Mac Jones, I tell you, I quit the show if Mac Jones is up in Pittsburgh. I'm done.
Yeah. Jamie, I knew this because I'm a big Auburn fan, and he was committed to Auburn for 18 months. before he flipped to Georgia on signing day.
I think Cam Newton was committed to, or my buddy calls him Scam Newton. I think he was committed to Mississippi State, and then a bunch of money got him to go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, went to Florida, then he came from Florida to Auburn.
Yeah. Oh, the days of when NIL wasn't around, and
well, and just to give you all a little bit of background on the Tez Walker thing and why Eric is so happy. I do have to say that my brother's wife is Devontae Walker's cousin. Jeffrey's wife is his cousin, so I like Devontae Walker. If I had my way, the Bills would trade back with Carolina to 33, let Carolina move up into the first round. And if I'm Buffalo, I would take Devontae Walker with the 33rd pick in the first pick of the second round, because Buffalo needs a wide receiver and you can get another draft pick out of the trade.
So I don't think, to answer Anthony's question, I don't think they'll trade back to get more draft capital, because that's not really their style. They have a lot of needs. So they need an impact center. So if Jackson Powers Johnson is there, or Kool-Aid McKinstry, or Cooper DeJohn, or they can get a legit second shutdown corner, and they can say, okay, we're going to take the outside, we're going to make you throw in the middle, and we're going to put Minka Fitzpatrick right there in the middle. They might do that to try to shut down Cincinnati and shut down all these teams that like to go to the outside. So I don't see it.
Eric, let me ask you a question about another wide receiver, though.
Sure.
You said Devontae Walker. Now, Deontay Johnson and Pickens are outside receivers, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think Johnson could move to slot, but that's
what about a guy like what is it? What's his name? Luke McCaffrey. He's a slot receiver, and that bloodline is rich with their father Ed and Christian, obviously. Would you see that kind of a fit in Pittsburgh, having the true slot receiver? So, I mean, it's not to dissuade you from Tez Walker. I get it. I'm just asking you from a fit standpoint.
So here's the thing. Lately, the idea in the slot has been big body receiver in the slot, and so they've gone away with the little and I miss the days of having like Antoine Randall on the slot. He was one of the more underrated wide receivers that ever came through. Clutch receiver in the slot, but they like big body receivers. I've heard, and I can't confirm, but I've heard they're going to, and if they do, I don't think they'll draft Tez, but I've heard they're going to try to pursue Calvin Ridley and put him in the slot, and they're going to go back to a smaller slot receiver, and they're going to roll with, and they're going to address wide receiver and cut Allen Robinson. The idea is in Smith's system is you need creative playmaking from the slot position, and you're not getting that out of your big body Juju Smith-Schusters, Allen Robinson, and Chase Claypool. They're not outrunning anybody, and so we'll see. I mean, it's hit new offense, so I think, and Omar Khan's in his second year, we really don't know what he's going to be as a GM.
And again, I think the one thing about even having a smaller slot guy and a quicker slot guy is the benefit to that is you have a big body in Freiermuth who can clear out underneath, especially
Katie said Calvin Austin. I think he's too small. I mean, I don't think can take the hits over the middle.
Well, the thing about it is like you got to get creative though. So again, if I'm going to put him in the slot, right, I have to give him multiple roles, right? If I just put him out on the slot, of course, right. But if I turn around and say, hey, Freiermuth is attached to the right side, and now I do a jet motion. I do a jet motion to Calvin Austin, right, away from him to him. All of that, because now if I give him touches, right, every jet motion from that point on is going to warrant at least one of the linebackers, hey, oh, wait a minute, he may get the handoff, right? And I just think that's another element. Then if he could throw a little bit. So imagine the jet motion again. That's what you guys, again, if I get the jet motion, I give a handoff, right? Dude stops in the midst of it as he has the edge from Freiermuth, right? Freiermuth chips the end, and then now he leaks out. Guess what? I stop. I can dump it off to Freiermuth. That's a nice wrinkle to what you've been doing or what you would be doing, right? I just think they got to get a little bit more creative with those guys because, again, if I remember correctly, did y'all move up to go get Calvin Austin?
We got him in the fourth round, and I think we did move up in the fourth round to get him. But
right.
So I mean, that's an interesting idea. I think that you've got a lot of like inside linebackers, also a huge spot you have to address because the great Steeler teams, James Ferrier, Larry Foote, you had great tandems at inside linebacker. And man, last year we were down to a guy selling Pokemon cards, Miles Jack, who owned a hockey team. We were rough right there in the end, and that's ultimately why Buffalo won. Is they exploited the middle of the field. They attacked the middle linebacker. Miles Jack got cooked on that final drive, which allowed Buffalo to win by penalties in ticky-tack, but penalties they should have been called. That was the issue. That was the glaring problem with the Steelers at the end of the year. So I think you've got to address you've got to find a third receiver. I think in his offense but you also got to use your draft capital smartly. You've got a first, second, and a third round pick. You need an interior lineman, you need a middle linebacker, and you need a corner. And so
I saw your mock draft, Eric, and you picked in the third round. You picked Jeremiah Trotter Jr. to Pittsburgh. Yep. Do you think he lasts to the third round?
If he's there, I'd take him in the third round because I think he's a thumper, and I think he would do okay. And I think he's got a lot more speed than some of the other guys got.
Who you talking about?
Jeremiah Trotter Jr. See, I just don't think he makes it out of the second round. I don't know how thick or how deep this middle linebacker class is, but I just don't see him getting out of the second round.
Honestly, if I would be okay with taking him in the second round, but the problem is we always take defense. Part of the problem, we go high on defense and we get all these high pedigree defensive players. We neglect the offense. To
the fortune of Pittsburgh, this is a pretty deep wide receiver class. I think we can all concur. So even if they waited till the third round for a wide receiver, he might not be that. He could be Quentin Johnston, who had an unremarkable first year, or he could be a Puka Nacua who lit it up. And I'm not saying that Pittsburgh has the quarterback to produce a Puka Nacua, but just that sure-handed guy who can get you your catches and do all that stuff. And you know what I'm saying? So I don't think you have to rush and take a wide receiver because you need that. I think it's deep enough where if they waited till the third round, you would still get a quality receiver.
I don't disagree, but Dave, I just want to tell you, Pickens had a great year with bad quarterback.
No, I'm not saying Pickens didn't.
You can get production. I would just summarize, to put the cherry on the cake, or to put the whipped cream on and wrap this up with Pittsburgh. What I think the smart thing to do is realize that, look, we're not going to get a top quarterback in the draft. And all these guys are old has-beens that aren't what they were. Unless Russell Wilson comes for vet minimum, and we can make a run, and he can have a resurgent year, none of these guys are going to win a Super Bowl be a Super Bowl quarterback. Justin Fields is not going to win you a Super Bowl. As much as everybody wants him to say he's going to be the guy, he's not the guy. Ben Roethlisberger at 23 years old isn't running out of the tunnel this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're not going to have that. So you suck it up. You find out what Pickett can really do with an offensive coordinator that isn't incompetent and isn't calling college plays, which is Matt Canada. You've got a decent offensive coordinator, and you bring in Mason Rudolph, and you tell Mason Rudolph, and you be sincere about it. We're going to see what Pickett has, and if he sucks, you're the guy. And you can go and be the guy. I would not pay for Kirk Cousins. No, he's old, and he's not going to win me a Super Bowl. So I'm not giving him $50 million. I would give Mason Rudolph $8 million and tell him, hey, if Pickett sucks, this is your audition all year. You go throw 40 touchdowns, go make bank next year.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think with the performance that Mason Rudolph pulled off at the end of the season? I'm not saying that any quarterback needy team is going to go out and sign him to some ridiculous contract, but do you think he's going to want more than $8 million?
I think he's going to want an opportunity to play. And I think because he's going to take a 1-year contract with a team, maybe Minnesota, or maybe a team that will offer him, give him that chance to say, hey, showcase what you got while a rookie sits behind you. So maybe Minnesota ends up with Penix and they end up with Mason Rudolph, and Penix is waiting. Perhaps, but I think he's comfortable in Pittsburgh. I think even though he got shafted in the quarterback competition, I still think that I think he would stay, and I think he would do it and it depends on if they actually mean it and they actually give him a fair shake. But I mean,
we'll sure. But again, I look at it from the fact that, do you trust an organization who told you were going to get a fair shake after Ben left and you really didn't get the fair shake, and you went out and drafted a Pickett and you put him on the bench? And again, I'm not questioning the Steelers organization as a whole, because we've seen it happen all the time. You see these quarterbacks drafted. Oh yeah, you're going to get this opportunity, and then the draft comes up, and there's a guy, and all of a sudden you're pushed to the wayside. So
he started a bunch of games. He started a bunch of games before us, and he had an opportunity to show. Until this year, he didn't show anything. Honestly, he got benched for Duck Hodges, who was an undrafted free agent.
Right. Well, but again, you got to remember, and again, this is the things that we talked about. You benched a quarterback based on quote unquote his play. But when you didn't have the offensive talent around him to allow him to shine in the moments that he's good in, you blamed the quarterback for the organizational ineptness to not address the needs that you had. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I get it, and
I'm not just.
Outside of 2019, and I get where you're going. I mean, they had James Washington, who was slow as dirt. Everybody was enamored. I hated this because I was in Pittsburgh, and they're like, James Washington is great. And I'm like, bro, he's slow as dirt, and he's not big. And everybody they thought he was some great wide receiver in Pittsburgh. It drove me nuts. I was never happy with James Washington as a receiver.
And I only say that because being a Bills fan from 1999 to 2018, every year we were sold the hope. But you had a guy that you thought was the next coming, but you didn't have that talent around him, or he wasn't the guy at all, because your scouting staff, your GM, and all those people that you put in charge couldn't find talent. If they were in the middle of the dream team of the USA basketball team, they wouldn't know who talent was on that team. So you understand my point is.
I get your point. I honestly, nobody offered him a contract last year. So Pittsburgh was the only one. So if he comes, go ahead.
If they don't stick with those two quarterbacks, or if they don't, I think a Russell Wilson would be a good fit in Pittsburgh.
I don't disagree, but I'm not paying him $20 million. I'm paying him.
Right.
I'm paying him. I'm telling him, hey, go win a Super Bowl because we got a good defense, and we'll let you run your offense and go do this. But if that's a dream scenario, and honestly, I've been a Steelers fan, so you wanting us to make a huge impact in free agency, you're going to see me posting like, we're signing Cole Holcomb, and I'm going to be that's going to be my offseason, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, so, anyways, we'll see what happens. But fun talk. I think 10 and 7 is the ceiling.
Sean says you look lonely up there. Chime in with some words.
I mean, I've been trying to say how they can work this for the longest, and I'm tired of giving props to the black and gold.
Don't give them props.
Well, I kind of have to, because I'm not like some people. I can speak with objectivity. So again, I have to do this, and it sucks because I shouldn't, right? So we're talking again. I said it. I'm gonna fix my needs first, right? Mm-hmm. However, I can develop certain positions. Right? So we were talking about going after, the premier offensive line guys, which is fine. It's cool. Do that, because that's a glaring need. That is a big piece to the puzzle. You can't mess that up, right? Because if you mess that up, playing in the AFC North, you're not going to last long quarterback-wise, right? So if you go after and you get your quarterbacks, right? So now the next thing would be for me is, hey, okay, look, I need somebody that's going to be the field general, or I need somebody that's going to be my fifth pressure guy. Because again, with Highsmith and with Watt, we can basically eat up most of the offensive line, right? if I get that fifth rusher, or even the fourth rusher, right? If I can get that guy to come down and be smart and be sound in the second level of the defense, I'm cooking with something, because my secondary doesn't have to be lights out every week, right? They can be mediocre if you want, right? We can get a bunch of filler guys. Matter of fact, we can go, 5 people back there, right? We can go 4-2-5 if we want, defense wise. And the person that fits that mold, what they would want would be, he's not a field general. However, he can be that fifth rusher or that fourth rusher. And I'm going J.J. Weaver from Kentucky, right? If you go J.J. Weaver from Kentucky, he almost plays like a Steeler right now, right? Probably don't have the middle of the line block shedding destruction or when it comes down to that, going through the A and the B gap. But I can tell you right now, C gap, play recognition, the guy is going to give you what he needs to give you. Not high rated, so he's not going to be hella sought out there, right? But I can tell you, if Pittsburgh gets a player like that and they develop their linebackers, again, we're talking, hey, look, in 3 or 4 years, we can possibly be in contention for an all-pro, right? So, again, that's the type of player we're talking about, because he can pass rush. He can contain outside and so forth. He can run up the field, so forth and so on. So you got to just make sure you sit here and say to yourself, all right, okay, I want to take a flyer on this guy because everybody else is not going to pick him because they can't develop linebackers like we can. However, this is something that we can use to our benefit, because we said we need linebackers. We said we need them. So guess what? All I got to do is teach the guy how to cover the tight end if the tight end comes out on his side, right? How to chip certain players and so forth. Again, if you teach him that, we are fine. We are good to go. And I think J.J. Weaver from Kentucky is the hidden gem for Pittsburgh Steelers late in the draft.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you guys a question? I'll ask you both. And let's say in the first round, they're not enamored with any of the offensive linemen. I mean, I get it that that's a need, but let me just say, hypothetically, that they're not enamored with the offense. Sean, you're going to get us booted, man. Shut up, Jesus. But anyway, this guy, he's controversial on the show and he's controversial in the comments. But anyway, so your offensive line, the guys that you're sitting at number 20, you have, right? So at number 20, you're looking at the offensive line. You're like, yeah, maybe I can get this guy, who's still a tweener or whatnot, and I want to go a different route. What are your thoughts on a guy like Chop Robinson from Penn State, opposite a J.J. Watt from a pass rushing? Because again, the reason I ask that is Cam Hayward underwent groin surgery. I was reading on Pro Football Talk that he was going to take time before he made any decision about playing again in 24. I mean, he might play. I don't know. I'm just saying what they said, what he said. I'm using his words. I'm not speaking from – I talked to Cam Hayward in the hospital, and this is what he told me. That's what was reported on Pro Football Talk by Florio. So that's all I'm saying. But you don't think a Chop Robinson would fit on that defense?
I can tell you. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Adam. It doesn't matter. I can tell you one of the sneaky losses that put the Steelers back on defense was when Stephon Tuitt's brother died and he suddenly retired, and that threw the defense back and threw the franchise back years, because they were really counting on him to be that, as Katie was saying, that fourth guy. Because when you had Tuitt, Hayward, Watt, and Highsmith, it was over. I mean, good luck. And then Tuitt left, and Ogunjobi and all these other guys are not him. So the only way I draft a defensive lineman, if I've got a big athlete like a Stephon Tuitt that can be that guy. And if I don't have that guy, then no.
I hate you. I hate you, David. I got to do this again. And I'm giving them – I hope Mike Tomlin is not listening. My Lord. Goodness. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers find themselves in that situation, hey, all the offensive linemen are gone, right, in their first pick. There's one guy that I'm going to take, and he's going to move the needle where I need to move it. And this is with or without Cam Hayward. And it is T'Vondre Sweat from Texas. That's it. That's it. It's the only other guy. Because he's going to consistently beat a double team. And even if he doesn't get home, your quarterback's going to have to evade him. So again, that's the only guy. That is the only guy that I'm going to sit here and be like, hey, okay, look, all right, we lost every offensive lineman. I would even take him before I take a wide receiver because the wide receiver class is so deep.
Right.
This guy, whoever gets him, and as long as he's not the only thing, he's going to probably feast. He's probably going to feast in whatever defense he goes to.
Well, like I said, I asked the questions. You guys give me your thing. I'm just throwing off names that I would think that in time of need and what they need. And you guys can tell me I'm right or wrong.
I'll make a prediction for you. I think Katie's right. I think Sweat's the guy. I think he will be the guy. Now that I think about it, I could see that happening. And plus, Tomlin, no matter what, he could say, I love offense. And you could buy into that bull crap, but he's a defensive coach. And if he sees a defensive talent like that, Tomlin's going to take the defensive guy.
Well, and I think it makes a lot of sense just because of the injury and the surgery that Hayward's coming. I'm not saying he's going to retire, but when you have groin surgery, it takes a little bit to get back into it. And especially in the position that Hayward's in when you're getting 320-pound guys pressed up against you on every play. So, I mean, that does take a toll on you. And as good as you are as a defensive lineman, that still takes a toll. And so you're not going to be as 100% as you were. And so you again, it's I guess it's about preparing for life after, because it comes up sooner than later. So yeah, I ask these questions not because I know for fact or not because, I mean, I just ask the questions so you can fill in my blanks. It gives me confidence going forward.
Here's the thing that we got to realize too, right? So not to insult anybody's intelligence or whatnot, right? So if he lines up anywhere from A gap to A gap, right, or B gaps, or whatever, B A, whatever it may be, whichever gaps he lines up in, right, he is almost going to command a double team, whether it be center and guard or guard, whatever it may be, right? He's going to guarantee a double team, right? And if he guarantees that double team, now we're talking, hey, I can run stunts, I can run twists, I can run slants, I can run all that in your interior line. If I have, again, that's the beauty of this, right? So if I have a guy that's good at dissecting plays, and as that stunt happens or as that double team comes, I slide in that crease. And if I'm disrupting your play, I don't even have to get home. I'm disrupting every play you run. Dang near. So again, we're talking about giving that to a TJ Watt and a Highsmith. So again, I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, do we really want to do that?
Do you remember? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I said, Katie, you're right. Do you remember who we both had guys that did that? So that reminds me of the days of Casey Hampton. It reminds me of the days of Haloti Ngata. It reminds me of the days of Tony Siragusa. That's what made our defenses great for that time period. Was you had a Siragusa that would take two guys and he would dominate those two guys. And boy, oh boy, Ray Lewis would come down like thunder because he'd have all that open space that from blockers that were occupied. So sure. I don't disagree with you. I think that's a great idea.
No, absolutely. And again, like I said, as much as the wide receiver is important, I think because this wide receiver class is deeper, I think it's going to afford a lot of teams the opportunity to fill more pressing needs with not necessarily the flashy names or the big time names, but the guys who are going to be the guys in the trenches. You know what I mean? Like in Buffalo's case, like I would really like to see, as much as I'd want Buffalo to draft a wide receiver, this wide receiver class is deep. I'd really like to see them draft one of the top 2 or 3 safeties in the first round, because that's their need. I mean, that is, you lost Micah Hyde, you're going to need a safety. And so at that point, as much as you want the sexy position, you know, give me a Cameron Kitchens, give me the dude from USC. What's his name? What's the safety from USC? Caleb Williams? Not Caleb
Bullock.
Caleb Bullock. Give me somebody like that, especially because that's like my glaring need. And it's probably something, unless I get a bargain basement safety in free agency, you know, like a Kyle Duger or something like that, that is a need that we're going to have to fill. So, you know, again, and it's all going to, everything we talk about and everything we say here is all going to hinge on what happens in the, you know, in the free agency. But again, we're really not trying to discuss in terms of free agents who's really available until we actually know what cap space teams are going to have till we actually know. And that's why we're planning on doing a free agency show the day of free agency to go over that, know where everybody stands, recap the signings, do all that stuff. So right now, this is just about where teams are, where they are in cap space, what their needs are, what their notable free agents are, and what draft picks they have and positions, and try to work from there and just see where they're going and see what direction. And especially some of these teams who have new coaching staffs or have added to coaching staff. So what we saw last year might not be the same type of offense or defense they're going to run this year. Things are going to be a little different. So we try to gauge their team based on what they brought in and what kind of style that we think they're gonna employ on the offensive side or defensive side of the ball. So, you know, it's just an interesting conversation to have, and that's why we like when you guys all tune in, so you can all appreciate where we come from, and we get all your feedback and where you come from, and we enjoy your questions. So, KD, any last thoughts before we take on off out of here?
Look, if you haven't already, be sure to go ahead and start looking up some of these different athletes based off the position that you guys need, because you need to get really acquainted with some of them. Because again, if you just go out the Mel Kiper and Todd McShay reports, you're going to be lost. And come draft day, you're going to be like, who the heck is that? And you don't know who this guy particularly is, but that may be a home run steal for you. Now, sometimes your team do draft a head scratcher, but if they look at, say, okay, look, what we already have, this is going to plus that up. Okay, so again, you know, I would go ahead and start doing some of my research, watching YouTube highlights or some of that nature to get acquainted with some of these players.
And I will say to Katie's point, that is perfect, because 2 years ago we ridiculed Bill Belichick on the draft pick of Cole Strange, yet that guy has been solid on that offensive line. He's not flashy guy, but he's a solid starter. I don't think he's missed a start, and he does his job, and he's just a solid offensive lineman. And offensive line is one of the most important positions you can have in football. It is there for your run game. It's there for your quarterback. So as much as we ridiculed the pick at the time, Cole Strange is a perfect example of who is this guy, yet he came in and filled in and has been doing an admirable job. So while there might be head scratchers for us, that's why they get paid the money to do what they do. Eric, do you have anything else to say?
Well, like Belichick's dog, my dog is trying to be the star of this show. Good job, Belichick's dog, for drafting Cole Strange. I remember that. I remember watching when Cole Strange was drafted, and I remember watching Belichick's dog in the chair. So, in the meantime, no, hope springs eternal. So, hey, this is the time of the year that everybody's 0-0, and we're gonna find your guy, and attach to your guy, and then get disappointed when you don't draft your guy. And then, in the rare occasion, if you draft your guy, really enjoy your guy. Go buy his jersey, because it probably is going to be worth the most then. If we're not banned already, but if that's when he's a first round draft choice, they don't always work out. So enjoy the moment now where you can.
All right, and we covered the AFC East yesterday, and I forgot to mention something. Or the other day, and I forgot to mention something, and I don't know if anybody here did on the show, but I do want to say one thing, that I want to tip my hat to probably one of the best special teams players to have played the game, who retired from the New England Patriots, Matthew Slater. That guy has been a special teams mainstay, probably one of the best guys to ever do it. And, Slater is just awesome. And, hats off to him. I know we don't talk about a lot of special teams players in the Hall of Fame and so on and so forth. And I know Devin Hester got in this past year, but I'm really hopeful that Matthew Slater makes it in when his time is called, because he does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. He's had a hell of a career, and he's made his living on the special teams, and so hats off to him. So that's all I got, but I do want to say next week. Do you want to say something more, Eric?
No, I don't. I just Matthew Slater, first ballot Hall of Fame, and shame on anybody that says he's not.
Yeah, absolutely. So, listen, from all of us here, I do want to say thank you for tuning in. Catch us on our Facebook and our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, go to YouTube and subscribe. Hit the notification so you know when our show's coming on. We'll be back on next Tuesday, 6 p.m. my time, Arizona, 5 Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking AFC South. We look forward to seeing you, and then we'll be back on Thursday next week as well. So from all of us at From the Couch, thank you for tuning in. Y'all have a great week, and we'll see you next week.